Disclaimer. The information on this show and provided from or through this show is general in nature and is not specific to you or anyone else. You should not make any decision, financial investment, life, or otherwise, based on any of the information presented on this show without undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional or advisor. You understand that you are using any and all information available on or through this show at your own risk. Try not to be a f***ing idiot.
Say that again.
Like a 3D audio programming podcast.
Wow. Okay.
So I used some thematics like, Halloween stuff, zombie apocalypses, things like that.
Yeah, okay. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. All right. So
it was fun doing it.
Yeah, that stuff fascinates me. I want to just jump straight into it. I'm keeping it casual, so these sorts of podcasts, I'm not trying to make something that is too over the top, professional. I feel like there's a lot of those sorts of podcasts out there, and we don't get to speak about interesting and more in-depth subjects when it's too structured and too formally structured. So I want to keep it. These podcasts are really about connecting with people that I know are doing interesting things, staying in touch with people that are doing interesting things, and like yourself, and really exploring where they're at and following their journey over time, and allowing them to share some interesting information or some ideas, thoughts, desires, dreams, and anything they want to share. I want this sort of a platform to be that. So that's where we're at, man.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, it's a good. It probably would be a good discussion because I think both of us aren't from a background of pure just kind of HTML kind of stuff. Like we like to, go a bit further more into the zone of what interactivity is. So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to start off with your story and who you are? And I feel like there's bits of and drips and drabs that you've shared with me over the time that I've known you, but I still have had to like put some of these pieces together because like, who is this guy? Who is Yuma? And what's his background? How did you get to where you are now?
Just a quick one. Do you do screen sharing and stuff?
Yeah, I can do screen sharing. Do you want me to do it or I don't mind.
I'll put it up. Yeah, I'll put it up. Let's see. Okay, Zoom's a bit. It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Oh,
I think you need to dig into some menu somewhere.
Yeah, multiple participants can share simultaneously. Advanced sharing options. All participants, and who can start sharing when someone else is sharing all participants. All right, give that a shot now.
Okay.
Select window of sharing screen. Safari. Press start 1. Share entire screen. Now. Safari. Under. Next. Share application. Share computer sound. Uncheck. Check. Optimize. Share. Share. Under. Next.
Okay, I'll share that. It's a bit of a...
All right. It's running your audio through as well.
Yeah.
From Zoom.
Okay. I'll just show a couple of things. Well, I guess I can say I've had two lives. A previous one was about 11 years ago now, where I was, I was born with just really kind of this mangas and cartoons and all sorts of stuff. My dad used to collect a lot of cartoons, erotic ones as well as kind of normal ones. But then that kind of put me directly in the pot, let's say, of pencil and paper sketching and stuff, and I just kept building that up until my adulthood, and started. I became a 3D professional. Started working, kind of across the world because I did travel a lot throughout my life.
Yeah, wow.
And at the culmination of it, I was managing a 3D animation studio, which was part of a French TV network in Asia. And some of the stuff I was doing was let's see. These are some of the later works I had done, but that was 10 years ago. Please keep in mind. uh, uh, Whoa. Okay. Your screen sharing. Let's pause your screen sharing. Okay. Do you see the dude in 3D?
Yes, I do. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So this was like some ZBrush stuff. I was doing kind of a bunch of different things. I was a bit of a Quake freak at some point. Part of the Black Pepper Crab clan in Singapore. Every
What?
Saturday, we're
Tell me the timeline for this. So you grew up with your dad, who was a bit of an avid comic collector. So
yeah,
from a young age, what was this? 10? Was this 15?
more
What
like
age were you?
6.
6, and so from
Yeah,
6 you started drawing at 6.
yeah.
Wow.
Just kept on drawing, doing, getting more complex. And then later down the track, I was doing like, spaceships and things like that, or interiors. And,
Yes.
sometimes when I'd have a girlfriend, I'd ask her to just kind of stay there and stay in that pose and not move for a while. And I'd draw her,
Your muse. Yeah.
yeah, my muse, just having some interaction like that. And so, across this, I was just kind of really experimenting across the span of 3D. As you can see I guess in some of the images here. And in 2008, I was off on holiday with a bunch of expat friends, and
Yep.
I ended up losing my sight due to an accident with fireworks.
Damn.
And
That
so,
sucks.
yeah, but it happens a lot over there. It's kind of the wild, wild west,
So where did you go? Was it Thailand?
Cambodia, as in Coco, is called Kokong or Bamboo Island. Now it's like this massive touristic hub, with everyone trying to get there. But back in the days, it was quite nice and quiet, just beach huts and things. And yeah, fortunate experience, I guess, and including for my girlfriend at the time, who had to kind of be there and, see my bloody face and trying to get some medical help.
Jeez.
Yeah. So
I can't even imagine. Was that like a New Year's Eve celebration?
That's right.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah. So it kind of put a damper on everything, that night. So I ended up being rushed at the hospital. Then I had to wait 24 hours approximately to get any kind of medical attention, because all they could find was it, the beta, whatever, bit of disinfectant that they were putting on my face. And that was pretty much it. Until they, my ex, she, to the day, really pushed for me to be evacuated to Bangkok Hospital. And when I arrived, fortunately enough, I got into the ICU, and then some like 22 days and 37 different general anesthetics and operations forward, I woke up and there was this kind of short, guy who was a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I always swap the names anyway, but he told me, yes, you're never going to see again. And I say, fuck no, I will see again at some point. And from there, I never actually stopped trying to figure out a transition, to make life better. Because, I mean, you have full 20/20 sight, and all of a sudden you wake up and you can't see anything. Your face is all, scarred up, and, everything hurts. It's like hell. And then slowly you have to kind of recover and reestablish your marks, around the 3D space around you, generally speaking. So I did that.
Especially I just thinking the line of work and what you'd been doing, basically the foundation of who you would have assumed you are, which you are still, is around that 3D and visual space, like growing up and doing that much art and then getting into 3D modeling, like the stuff that you're showing me here looks awesome. And I could only imagine if you were able to keep progressing from 2008, more than 12 years later, but then to have something like that's quite jarring experience in it changed. It must have been such an overnight transition. A shock kind of breaks that vision of who you are. It changes who you are completely and puts you on a different But is like, how do you deal with something like that? And I think that's where I'd love to go in this conversation, is that you've still kept on going down the path you believe you wanted to go, regardless of the situation.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a radical change. It's light to dark in a split second, and then your world completely changes. You have to readapt. So that's why I call it my second life, because it's a second life of readaptation.
That's amazing.
I used to be going to the bathroom. I could just do it standing up. Perfect golfing pitch, bam. But then I lost my sight, and then it was like OB all the time. Like those kind of little things, that just kind of, they become irritating. So you solve all of
I
these,
bet
wipe
it would
them
drive
out
me
of your
crazy.
way.
So
Yeah.
when you woke up, you couldn't see anything. Was it just that you could hear someone speaking?
Yeah. So when I woke up, I just came out of like a 14-day induced coma, and I had people around. Like, I mean, I'm pretty thankful for that. I had a good entourage, and I had people coming to visit me all the time. And what was funny is that when I woke up, because what happens is your system shuts down selectively to keep you, living. So the survival instinct in your body starts to shut down certain organs which are, less, I guess, critical at that time. So I was completely bloated with food, processed food, and I had the most gigantic shit of my life because everything was constipated for so long. And like just those things, it stuck to me because it tells you how amazingly complex a body is.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
And the doctor and nutritionist came over afterwards and told my ex, like, he was like, you know what, if he was a vegetarian, he would have died. So that's another thing to think about. Yeah.
Wow.
What,
because of the lack of iron and
loss of blood? Yeah. Well, gory details aside, I got out of it, and soon after, I just kind of transitioned straight back to my work. And I was the manager, and I had like an assistant, had an artistic director, I just like, the full nine yards. But then when they saw me coming back in, with a bandage around my face, and, pretty much knowing that I'm never going to see again, they were induced with the same thing I was induced when I first saw some of them, because some of them had some motor difficulties because of Cambodia and Agent Orange back in the days. So the kids of those who were exposed to those chemicals ended up with a couple of deformities, like a leg or, things like that. And we took on some of these kids to give them some 3D skills. So it was kind of a reflection of what I saw in them the first time I met them, but this time it was on me. Wow. So I had to show them, like, well, you know what? It doesn't matter. So I transferred to doing more kind of typed things, and but that was kind of small beer. Like, it wasn't enough for me. Like, I'm a creative guy, so I decided to make a transition and move to New Zealand with my then girlfriend. Took some class.
Were you working in Cambodia?
Yeah, I worked for a year and a half there afterwards.
Okay. And so you were it was at a studio?
Yeah, it was a studio.
And it was a 3D animation studio. Okay, gotcha. Yep. And then transitioned to New Zealand. Did you do any study before going into animation, or is this all self-taught?
It was really all self-taught, because I already had a natural talent for drawing and, those kind of things.
Yeah. Interesting.
What's funny is that back then I had a very good visual intuition. I understood how graphs worked, how all these, fall offs and, all these things in animation and kinematics. I had learned all of that by buying these gigantic books. Like, I used to use 3D Studio Max.
Wow.
Then I kind of transferred to Maya.
Yeah.
And, you start to create all your materials, everything. You have a lot of different things that you need to learn, I guess, like when you're doing 3D. So I took the time to do that. And so you didn't really need that of a formal education, let's say, in terms of 3D. But then when I
Yeah.
transitioned, I decided that maybe the most logical progression was to, because I had the visual intuition and I could keep it, why not now kind of get on par with the logical, mathematical, structured kind of intuition as well. And that's when I took bridging classes in New Zealand, like Math A, B, C, all of these.
Yeah.
And landed in Brisbane in the middle of the cyclone in 2013 in January.
Oh, wow.
And it was Australia Day, and I was like, okay, this is Brisbane. Welcome to Brisbane.
Welcome.
Big floods everywhere.
Yeah. Crocodiles in your backyard.
Yeah, like bull sharks, falling on your car, like whatever, right? And
absolutely.
Mosquito nets.
So where are you?
Like.
Where are you originally from? Because you've got an accent.
Yeah, I'm French Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah,
and you grew up in
accent,
Japan or France?
Everywhere. Between
okay.
France, Japan. Yeah, like
so
when I
let
was
me
a kid,
guess.
my parents took me to the States.
So when you were a kid, parents took you to the States. So the accent would have come from the private schooling that you went to.
Yeah. And girlfriends, American girlfriends.
Okay, so, gotcha.
Yeah, brushes off on you after a while.
Yeah.
That's
amazing. And then you land in Australia during 13 during cyclone season.
Yeah. And found my place, found my mark, and I was enrolled at UQ for Bachelor of IT.
Okay.
But then that kind of kept going, with some difficulties, I guess, because when you want to do mathematics, you need everything to be exact. You can't guess work. You have to, if halfway throughout you're solving a problem, there's something that is misread or mistyped, it's not going to work. So it's very empirical, as opposed to some of the more qualitative stuff that you could do, let's say, in journalism or, some of these other degrees. So that was a big problem, because most of the content was not accessible. So graphs, diagrams, anything that's on a PDF, PowerPoint, any of that stuff is just, you can't read it. So you either, cower into a corner and start going, well, I'm entitled to this and that. Please be lenient with my grades, whatnot. I decided to jump in straight and go for the headbanger and, understand the stuff from the ground up. And it takes a bit longer.
Well, because you got a background in creative, that's like trying to get me to learn maths. I've never been that great at maths, and I tried through high school. And I was taught, if you're not good at something, you need to focus on it to become better. And it's been a few years for me figuring out that that's probably not the best way to go. At least for me, it was realizing over time, and I still work on it to this day. Focus on something that you find you find naturally easy and enjoyable to do. And if you can get better at that, at some point you can align that with your income or a job. And that's the point where work is not work is play. But it's for you to relearn and jump into another field that some would say creatives aren't that good at, mathematics. That's crazy.
You know what? The funny part is that the creative aspect of things is an immediate response of what you do. So for instance, like, in music, you're creative, you're producing some beats. You could take half an hour and you can develop your beat into something consistent and structured that sounds nice and everything. Whereas you do like coding, it takes longer before you actually achieve that result. So my aim was always to go, all right, how can I create as many shortcuts as possible for me that immediate result? So, I'd be writing scripts here and there to automate stuff. I'd be making these little changes in my system, in my code environment, so that I get to achieve and to test what I'm coding far quicker than if I was just going, just kind of using, let's say, first principle. But then I'm not kind of, shying away from first principle, because that's where good code comes in. So that those are the new things that I learned across, time as I took more courses. And, it's gotten to a point where now mathematics is this amazing, powerful tool that gives you that much more intuition on how certain things might work, and how you can, I would have never thought before that I'd be able to just put like 3D stuff and transform that 3D programmatically, and it works. Before I would have needed like, like a GUI, like a
Yeah.
user interface where I could just go, all right, put this here and there.
Yeah.
I used to be like a big fan of lofting in my 3D
What's
modeling days.
lofting? What's that?
Lofting is when you have this, you take a line or a spline, which is kind of the transversal line on which another shape will just follow the contour. Yeah. So it's kind of it's a 3D technique. And, now I can actually start doing lofting because I've understood how I can, put things around mentally in the 3D space and start to create objects.
Right. Okay. So talk to me more about how your math component feeds into the practical side of being in the 3D space. So what program would you use? Have you found a way to be able to programmatically write code or write math in order to adjust what is happening in 3ds Max? Is that what you're saying?
I actually just use like 3D APIs, like like SceneKit or OpenGL, OpenAL. But it's really the audio component that starts to take front seat when I try to debug stuff. So when I create like I want to create a zombie apocalypse kind of stuff, then I'll start putting voices and chains on the characters that are walking around, so I can understand which one is which and what their behavior is, because I'd be putting some AI into the mix. And then to debug that non-visually, obviously one of the best alternatives is sound. And that kind of came from an assignment I had in like a AI course that I was taking. And one of the assignments was, well, take this robot, put it from point A to B, no matter what kind of obstacles are around. And as an extra, put extra links on that robot as if it had a tail, and make sure it doesn't, it doesn't conflict with the obstacles. Well, how do you debug that non-visually?
Yeah.
Wow. That question gave source to some creativity. And then I started to really enjoy that creativity, like this using this surrogate form, which is just as valid, but perhaps maybe even complementary to something which is visual, to give you kind of better understanding of your surrounding. That's when I started to have this kind of this kernel, this seed of a how I could just kind of now move forward, because I didn't want to do math and coding to be an accountant or to be, I'm not saying being an accountant is a boring job, but to me personally, I don't want to spend my entire day every day cooking books, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
this is your passion, is that creative space and doing 3D, and I just think that I've never heard of a story where someone's figured out how they can interact and create 3D environments through the use of math and without. So have you got any examples of? Is this an example of one of the something you've done?
Yeah, sure. I'll hold on. So for those who are a bit PC, too bad. But this is hold on. So I'll just show you an example. So this is fully black screened, but the environment is fully 3D audio. Let's go. Show comic.
As a side note, I had Dan Sugars on my first podcast. I don't know if you remember him. He was at the VR meetups. I'm sure you would have bumped into him there. And we were talking about 3D audio. So I'll have to connect you two up again because I think you would
Mm,
find that fascinating. He's working with an AI company in Brisbane at the moment to help
yeah.
them with uh, AI generated voice. So
Mm,
working on how to engineer that, how to create that with an AI and building the framework for that to be even possible. So
mm.
but this is
Yeah, we can.
fascinating.
Yeah, we can definitely get to that because I mean, I just finished a machine learning course.
Yep.
Uh, I've stacked it on top of several other certificates that I got, during my years, like online and stuff. So I'm very, very kind of interested in that kind of DSP, to basically text to speech, right? But with some intonation. I could show you
Mhm.
something after that, which is an example of what AI can lead us in terms of interfacing with a computer.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, absolutely. That to me is where it needs to go because I feel like VR was a bit of a jump and still is a bit of a jump for people to get used to interacting with a 3D interface. So going from a
mm,
flat screen and a mouse and a keyboard, which I don't know if you remember, but I still remember as a kid struggling to try and learn how to touch type because that was not natural for me.
mm, mm,
And having to remember where all the words are. It's I just learned my ABCs, and so why is the A key next to the S key or, the Z key, literally the Z
mm,
key is beneath the A key? It didn't make sense to my mind at the time. Still
mm.
doesn't make sense to my mind. But the having to having to learn how to touch type was so hard as a child for me. And I
Yeah.
think jumping into 3D, it's kind of more it's more it makes more sense, but a lot of the generations are our age and older have learned how to touch type and use a mouse on a flat surface
Yeah.
that is directly in front of our face. So then going back into 3D, it's kind of having to unlearn the mouse and keyboard and relearn how to engage in an intuitive 3D environment. Um,
Mm, mm,
yeah,
mm,
that to me is fascinating, but that's quite a bit of a leap. Why can't we get to a point where AI or technology computing is happening in the background so we can have like, for example, I'd love to be able to have a note-taking application app that is
yep.
sitting on my phone that I can just launch and then I can put the phone on the table. Why can't that listen to myself, listen to the other person in the meeting, and obviously, as long as we both consent, it will start writing down paragraph for paragraph what each person is saying and annotating that, making notes on our behalf, so that after a
Hmm.
meeting, like in during the meeting, I don't have to think about writing out my notes. I can let
Yeah.
the technology take the notes on my behalf, and at the end, I can say, AI, whatever, can you send a copy of those notes to me and Frank? And it should just be able to do that without me having to manually do all this admin work to get it to work. So anyway, that's just my rant for the day.
and and that should be systematic as well. So that means that you shouldn't have to. There's this big issue with in the blindness world is that when you're blind, you need to have different things to help you work through your day, whether it's going to be mobility, education, social, entertainment, whatever. You need different sets of tools, and there's this thing called the Batman tool belt syndrome, where
What's that?
you need like particular tools for subsets of problems. So you need like 100 tools to get across your day. Whereas if you systematize everything, it's kind of centered into one system. And this we can get onto a bit later. So I'll show you where I guess I'm at in that. I guess in that area of research. I do
Yeah,
like researching. So,
yeah.
but those are the paradigms that we need to shift towards because honestly, it's a true zombie apocalypse out there. There's so many people who bump into me, and I'm the blind guy. They bump into me because they're looking at their touchscreens. You know,
Oh my god!
so
I'm only
yeah,
laughing because
so
that's terrible. But yeah, that is
it,
that is terrible.
yeah.
Honestly.
But okay, this is an example of a 3D audio. I don't know if it will be in stereo on your side through the Zoom thing, but just imagine this is actually 3D. So I'll put this up. Did you hear the white cane?
Play it. Oh, yeah.
What's up, everyone? My name is Jake Dean, and welcome to Blind Comedy Night at Blind Comedy Club. Why don't blind people skydive? It scares the heck out of the dog. What do you call a blind dinosaur? A Dilithisaurus. What do you call a blind German? A Nazi.
So this basically is like it's the environment is actually 3D. I don't know if it appears stereo on your side,
but it is stereo on my side. But I'd love to. I don't know if you can throw it up on YouTube. I'm pretty sure YouTube does 3D audio. I know it does 360 video. Yeah, because there's examples of 3D audio that I sent to people. The classic one at the barbershop getting a haircut. You can hear the scissors.
Right, yeah. That's a cool one. Yeah, I like that one.
That one was done years ago. I didn't realize how old it is, but it was done. It was uploaded years ago, maybe 5-6 years. And so if you've got some, I feel like it's an untapped opportunity because it's such a new,
completely.
It's a new experience. It's a new world to be able to listen to 3D audio, and I mean ASMR. I think is kind of a stepping stone in a way towards that. But you think ASMR is specifically my understanding is it's specifically for it's 3D audio for relaxation and triggering that ASMR. I forget what the acronym stands for.
That's not enough. That's not complex enough yet. There's so much more that you can do. Like, I would kind of put this new frontier, let's say, into one small analogy. When you walk, let's say, in between two rows of trees, right? And the wind passes through it. It's not the tree itself as a single object that's emitting sound. It's the thousands of leaves which are interacting with each other, rustling at different frequencies, and the wind is actually creating a shape across those branches. And this is the reason why most of the times when you walk under like a line of trees like that and the wind comes up, your ears start to pick up and you start to feel a bit of this kind of chill down your spine, but a good one, a positive one. That's because it's literally the richness of the world around you, which your ears are exposed to. And when you understand that, for instance, our ear has millions of cells, right? Our retina has like 1.8 million, I think, per eye. But then not all of it is able to be streamed in high resolution because you got the fovea, and so you got the and the macula, which are taking the focal points in which you kind of focus with your eyes stereoscopically, and that gives you kind of a clear image. However, the rest is quite blurry. In sound, it's different because you can literally pick every single piece up and distinguish every single corner. And you don't have like a focal point kind of thing. It's just the orientation of your head. But whatever is lying in front of you in an arc of, let's say, about 170 degrees, you can pick up on anything. And then you could start to create that rich canvas inside your head as you train yourself to listen to it more in the overall instead of the focus. This ability to use sound to give us navigation, extra information, and maybe sometimes information that you wouldn't be able to get visually is that frontier I'm trying to get to.
The ability to communicate through audio is another interesting one because if you received everything in terms of like your EQ and understanding where someone's at and how they feel, you pull a lot of that as coming from the audio and the sound of what they're saying versus if you can't get those tones and tonalities right, you can't tell if someone's upset or happy to see you or there's so much data or information that we receive as a human being, not just through visuals but through the auditory experience that we have around us. Is an animal sick? Well, you can hear it. You can hear whether it's sick or hurt, or whether it's healthy or it's ready to mate, or audio is a big component. Does the sensitivity to be able to hear, is that increased if you remove someone's ability to see? Like, is that something that you can train, or is that something that is that a myth? Is that a myth?
Yeah, let's take it this way. It's like let's speak in terms of neuroplasticity. So if you took like a balloon, right, and you put some water in it, fill it up with a bit of water, not too much, and then you kind of put your hand and squash it in the middle, then the water goes on the sides, right? Then now you take your second hand and then squash one side, the other side actually increases.
Yeah,
So
okay.
it's this ability for a brain to put more focus. It's not necessarily a heightened sense, but perhaps it could be interpreted as heightened sense, but it's actually more focus and more separability, being able to
Gotcha.
distinguish more things.
Yeah,
And yeah, it takes training, but it does
fascinating.
occur.
Yeah, fascinating.
And there's another level, which is synesthesia. And that's when your visual cortex is able to just project certain things. So in my case, it took me like 2 years to get to that point, but I was able to start to put equations mentally in my head and visualize them mentally,
Wow.
and
Yeah,
keep a
okay.
tab of it as I'm working through a problem. But that saps your energy a lot. Like the brain taking 33% of, all the energy, you need a lot of Mars bars and stuff like that to be able to keep creating those visuals while you wake. Yeah. It
Wow.
would be nice if they had some system or, something where, you could actually have this continuum of being able to create that kind of imagery inside your head.
This is really fascinating to me because as a kid, I didn't really. I grew up overseas, and we weren't really allowed to leave the house too often because of the neighborhoods that we were in. And so I was homeschooled, but I found that my imagination was something that took over from a really young age. So I would, read all these different fantasy books, but also I would kind of just sit, close my eyes, and imagine these worlds, these places and
Dragonlance.
adventures. Dragonlance, right? Sounds crazy, but that's what I did to pass time because it's so bored.
Yeah.
But it got so vivid for me that I realized during school time, if I had trouble trying to remember something, I could actually take it up into this tower that I would visit, during my imaginary, time, and
Mm-hmm.
I could put that thought, that piece of paper, that message or something into the treasure chest that was up at the top of the tower, or I could put it
Yep.
on the shelf there and I would just collect these virtual things that were memories and put it on the shelf in this tower.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in order, if I forgot something or every time I had, my imaginary time, I would go and I would walk up this spiraling staircase. I'd get to the top, I'd open the creaking wooden door, and there would be stone paved. There would be the bed in the corner. There would be the chest, and there would be the shelf of artifacts. And I could remember everything as long as I didn't. I could never. And I think this is the important part. You have to, similar to Inception, you can't just drop yourself straight into that virtual room and remember where everything is. The
Mm-hmm.
process of imagining vividly walking up those stairs and then opening the door, and then there's your room. It takes a few minutes walking up those stairs. Your mind is just kind of preparing. You're entering into this state, entering it fully into it. Your eyes are closed. You kind of almost like partially falling asleep, and then you
Mm-hmm.
open that door and then everything's there. And
Yeah.
it was super, super vivid. But I use that as a means of storing certain information that I struggle with during school. I would use some of that, yeah, that kind of concept. But that's
That sounds
fascinating.
like
I've
a
never heard of anyone else talk about it except you, and I didn't know it
wow.
takes up that much energy to do that. It's fascinating.
Well, you said that you were almost falling asleep while trying to visualize these, right? So it did kind of you just had to concentrate, and so therefore you kind of almost in this meditative state, or it's like a conjunction of meditative and mnemonic state,
Yes.
where your
Yeah.
brain is actually just completely activated. The rest of your body kind of it doesn't shut down, but it's just on passive mode while
Yeah.
your brain's activating that imaginary. And I there were it. Not all of us actually have that. So I've noticed, since I've lost my sight, I try to make as many visually impaired friends as possible, like from the
Mm.
functional to those who have a bit more difficulties. But then one interesting thing is I still dream fully colored vivid images.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I have this one friend. I ask him, so, what'd you dream about? Like, he's like, I don't dream about anything. Well, what do you mean? Like, you don't have any kind of, imagery, vision, anything, shapes, even a concept.
But was
usually
he born visually impaired, or did it happen during his
no,
lifetime?
he spent 19 years of his life like fully sighted before he started gradually losing his sight.
Okay. But he
so
doesn't
you would
dream.
Yeah. So you would expect him to dream, but he doesn't dream at all. It's just complete, boom, out of consciousness, and then wake up in the morning, whatever it is.
I wouldn't mind that, because I'd get some better sleep at night. I think it sounds like it's just better at sleeping than the rest of us.
Well, it depends, because he might be completely insomniac, and it'd take him a long time before he can get to sleep. So I'm very happy to have my I like to call it kind of my my prior days soul reassessment of what I'm going to do today, kind of stuff. Like, that's what dreams are for me.
Yeah, that's great. That's really fascinating. So he doesn't dream at all, or at least when he wakes up, he doesn't remember any of his dreams.
No, maybe it's like that. And I tried to kind of put him into like Carl Jung, some of these things about dream interpretations and how it could help you with your own goals and objectives, and maybe something that you messed up with, and then kind of reassess it for yourself, because that's the capacity we have. So why not harness it, right? And maybe I'll ask him a bit later, but I don't know if he's really kind of caught up on that. And so I do think that if you have a lack of imagination, then that kind of projects as well, into the world. So if you go, I can imagine, like, I can envision something into the future, and I'm going to create a dichotomy between my potential and my reality, and try to unify them over time as I progress into the world and do actionable things, operations on the world, which reflect back onto me. Yeah. So those are the things, being a computer geek as well now. I have another difficulty, which is that we're living in a world right now where everyone is coming up with a solution. Like, the ability to program and create something has been democratized to the point where everyone is trying to push their solution. And then me being on the receiving end, I have to learn hundreds of different ways of making my life more productive. So, like, to do like Trello, and I had to code it to make it accessible for me and more efficiently accessible. I had to take, other stuff like Slack. I started writing some code to make it accessible and more efficiently accessible. GitHub, all of these different programs. But in the end, this is kind of junk, isn't it? Like, it's, let's say in the absolute of things, in terms of where you want to go in life.
Are you referring to the tool belt again? Like, you've just got
the tool belt,
so many different components, and when really those are taking up way more of your life, trying to figure out how to use them, versus what you're trying to do is use them to get to a certain point. You're trying to get somewhere. You're not trying to spend your life learning how to use the tools. Yeah,
correct. I mean,
so
I don't know if you have this sometimes. Like, you kind of go, well, there's all these solutions and they're great, but there's nothing that unifies them together. So, that kind of brings it back to that capacity for, the current AI revolution. Obviously, that started, it started on pen and paper in the 1950s, right? Like the Bellman equation, the infinite stochastic estimation of future, and then you had Bayes algorithm, which is just restricted with our capacity to compute a large number of factors and properties. But once we get to that point, especially with quantum computing, we'll be able to actually really simulate that kind of complexity. But in the meantime, we're still stuck with all of these kind of mutually exclusive solutions, which are also backed up by companies which are competing with each other. You don't know when there might be a merger or anything like that, but then other companies are creating their own. I mean, don't you hate that thing where every time you travel, you have to get your adapter travel kit? Why don't we just have all the same adapter and it just works.
Yep.
Yeah,
That
that's something
currency, the ability to have some one currency that you can use no matter what country you go into, doesn't have to be applicable outside of, the major city, but within the major city, it would be beneficial if we could do that. Even a passport that allowed us and a visa that allowed us to get into a major city, and we had the confines, like we could meet with people in that city as a trading space, like physical space. Until VR really gets to a point, and 3D audio combined into that, I think is really important. But VR, in my mind, was the dream is that you could meet and do business with anyone and work with anyone. All right, work with anyone. Doesn't matter where they are. Doesn't matter what language they speak. If you could meet in a 3D space, and it was able to, use your Google Translate in real time, so you could talk to someone who wasn't speaking English, but you were speaking English, and you could work together in a space and come up with a new solution and an idea. That was really exciting to me. Because then you don't have to travel. You don't have to have this adapter issue where you go to another airport and you can't charge your phone because it's the fucking, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it's a waste of time, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same with like USB-Cs and all that. I mean,
exactly.
I'm sure there's going to be like a magnetic technology that's going to allow us to, kind of really, just kind of plug things in. It just works that way.
Well,
I mean,
have you seen the power chargers for, I think Samsung has one, I don't know about Apple, but you can put your phone on the charging plate and you don't plug it in, you just sit it there and it'll start charging. It conducts electricity through the plate into your phone to charge the battery. That's pretty interesting.
Inductive charging. Yeah, like that's something we've been testing with our hardware over here. Like, we play around a lot with hardware. Like we just recently got some UVC LED lights.
Okay.
And we're going to make an experiment. Like we're going to put some salmonella, whatever, like, non-fatalistic germs and stuff on on a piece of glass.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to find someone at UQ so that we can actually record with an electron microscope, passing like the UVC light on top of it, see what it does.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's fascinating stuff. I think there's a especially for, cableless charging, one of the and I'm not an engineer, so an engineer can probably jump in the comments section and really wrap it up in this regard. But I do feel like some of the challenge we have is you've got so many different audiences, different pockets of people, and it's becoming more and more individual, the experience that people are having. You can't just blanket put an assumption that, okay, from this age to this age, they're all going to love McDonald's. So we're going to make one ad campaign. We're going to run it for this age population. Like that those demographics are getting smaller and smaller and more broken up, individual over time. But with the charging concept, I was just thinking like one of the downsides to big business is you get to a point where you've got something that's successful, you have a huge ecosystem, and then it makes it really hard to remove the idea of charging cables because you realize how much money you make off the back of people breaking their charging cable and having to come in and get a new charging cable, right? Apple might account for a massive amount of profit margin that Apple receives versus selling phones, like new phones. You never, right? There's something there, I think, worth exploring.
I guess it's like continuum. It's like capitalistic continuum processes that might, kind of more, push some of the companies to go towards that recyclability of things. I think Tom Ford did something like that with his cars. So by looking at the scrapyard and looking at the pieces which were there, and then try to kind of diminish the types of objects that would end up at the scrapyard, and then instead kind of readjust all of the different components in the car so that people can actually buy a kit of this or that.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
So it's there are all of these processes out there, but I guess with the hardware stuff, I think especially with what has happened recently, with the COVID lockdown and all of that.
Yeah, and the impact on supply chains.
There's a bit of a shift to kind of get back. I mean, we were playing, with a pick and place machine that is able to pick and place 1,000 components an hour. And it's like, well, hell, like if we know if we can use OpenCV, we can serialize our stuff, and we can just kind of, use a CNC machine over a certain grid. And then, just someone just has to flip it around the other side, do the other part while the components are being all picked in place. And then, those kind of things are fun to do as well, because it brings you back to, putting your hands into things. And I think the digital world has taken us too much away from that.
Yes. Yeah.
Of recent date, where everything is like, one of the most ridiculous things I heard is like, I was walking from class to class at uni, and I hear this person going, okay, TTYL. It's like, okay, please talk to you later. All right. But, let's not evolve the language in such a way that we're digressing,
Yeah. That's funny. That's fascinating. One story my younger brother told me, which I found was really awesome as well, is I've always been interested in the digital space, but at a young age I was a bit more into I was creative, and I'd do stone carving and wood carving overseas, and I got into that, and that kind of dropped off when I came back to Australia. You get into your mobile apps, you get into gaming, you get into all of that side of things as you grow up. And then my brother went, and so fast forward a bit, he did construction at uni, and he went and was working on a few construction sites. And one thing, I don't know how the conversation arose, but he mentioned to me that there's a massive joy in being able to drive down the highway or drive down a street and then be able to point to someone, or to even just to look out the left-hand window and see a project that you physically remember doing, maybe a bit of cement mixing or laying down some woodwork. Although you did a small part, you can still look at this giant, this infrastructure that was not there before 6 months ago, and now it's there. And there's a sense of accomplishment in seeing that. And I thought that was awesome.
That's tangible.
Yeah,
it's tangible. Yeah, it's a tangible result of your work. I mean, I did some furniture design when I was doing 3D.
Yep.
And to see this furniture arrive. So I was in Italy for a while, in Genoa, and I was working in this big multimedia company. And it was awesome. Like, we're in an Italian palazzo style place, and the ceiling was like 15 meters high or something, and at the top you just had this fresco, old paintings.
Wow. And
we'd just be doing 3D in there. Wow. And to receive this furniture, once you've designed it, right? You prototyped it, you checked all of its load balancing and everything, and you get it coming over. It's like, oh man, it's an awesome feeling. And I think we should get back to that. Like it's great to be able to have something malleable. You print it out, or even if after you print it out, you can refine it. You can, I'll show you something. So
I think there's two sides of this conversation, because I've really struggled with one of the things I wanted to do when I was younger was get into fashion design. And I actually, I always thought about it, and then got into tech space. I got into VR partially because of that 3D component, the idea that I could make any sort of fashion I wanted, any architect. I wanted to do architecture, I wanted to do fashion, I wanted to do design. But I felt I couldn't make a decision when I was younger, because it felt like I had to choose one or the other. And then VR comes along, and I realized, well, if this gets anywhere or somewhere, even the 3D space as it is, you can become an architect and a fashion designer within a lifetime if you're working within the 3D space, within 3D graphics, within 3D simulation and computing. And so that fascinated me, and that's why I've taken this path. But one thing I'm glad the reason I didn't get into fashion when I look back, one reason I wouldn't get into it now is because every Westerner nowadays probably has their own sort of cheap fashion line, or they've got a friend that's doing this, gym clothing line, or it's like some sort of pop culture clothing line, and all they're doing is jumping on Shopify, setting up a page using Printful and whacking a logo on a t-shirt. And my concern is that is landfill. Like, you are literally generating landfill and then jumping on Instagram and Facebook and creating ads to convince people to buy your stuff. But the stuff that they're buying is just a slightly different logo. Yes, they're supporting you. I mean, that's part of it. It's like, oh, support me and buy my merch. But for me, it's like, I'm happy to support you any other way. I don't want to buy another hat. I don't want to buy another T-shirt that's going to be in my wardrobe for 6 months and then in the ground after that. Or tell me how it's going to be recyclable. Like, can we get to that point? Because every Instagram, there's so many small businesses out there that are just pushing landfill at this point in time.
Do you know that there's actually $26 billion of loss in the US only with this kind of stuff?
In loss? Do you mean,
yeah,
what do you mean loss?
So that means basically clothes, all sorts of clothes that end up actually either in landfills or they get burnt.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
the fashion industry is the second most polluting industry in the world. Second. And that's due to that whole public imagery, merch, let's distribute, like you said, just silk print something and boom, send it out and stuff. The thing is, like, there's that game I used to play. It was called Crisis.
I've heard of Crisis. Yeah. The CryEngine, right? CryEngine was I didn't get into CryEngine.
I love the suit of the guy.
Hell
like
yes.
the actual bionic suit that you can wear.
Yep.
And it's got all these sensors inside that augment your capacity to do things.
Yes.
I think, that would be a great place to go, especially with this ability now for everyone to start creating PCBs and different fabrics. There's graphene, which is coming up, which is awesome, has some incredible properties, and you're still actually using the same initial form of when you create patrons and stuff. It's the same cuts. You can use the same machines, but you just change the material and its actual function and the way it's actually delivered to the end user.
Yes.
So instead of
that's fascinating. Local manufacturing, I think, was what you were hinting on just before, and I think that is absolutely the way we're going to go after this because of COVID. It was kind of starting to come back a little bit, but COVID's fast-tracked it in a huge way because so many people have been impacted by the supply chain issues that if we can get some small local manufacturing hubs happening when it comes to hardware, deck it out with robotic arms and assembly lines, 3D printers, CNC machines, etc. And if you can input pretty much standardized material into that manufacturing hub, but then on the other end, it comes out in different shapes and forms. So I'm thinking about, you think about 3D printing as an example. You can use 500 milliliters of printing resin, and you can print a giant fucking cube, which probably no one's going to pay anything for, and they probably won't see any innate value in that. But if you output with the same amount of filament, you resin 3D print a 1-to-1 scale of your baby child that was born the other day, like because you 3D scanned him or her and got her 3D printed, people will pay hundreds of dollars for that just because of the shape that it was output as. It's the same amount of resin, but the sentimental value is extremely high on that output. So they're just a thought is that manufacturing hubs, if they can become localized, they could also be very malleable in terms of what they're outputting. It's not just the same mobile phone, a million times. It's a unique piece of furniture for someone. It's, unique, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but the idea is that
this, the sky's the limit, and there's so much time that could be spent on reflecting these new innovations. Like one of the things I'm doing, but specifically for my own need, is I'm kind of looking at. So I've got a friend, who's got a robotics company and stuff. Shout out, and he's got, they've actually really made these servos much more dynamic. And the idea is to get 2 servos to give me 6 degrees of freedom of rotation, and patch it up on my backpack as a small little clips kind of stuff.
Hell yeah.
And it's connected to my phone via Bluetooth. And there's a small low-res camera that actually looks at my neck. So what I do is scan my neck first in 3D, and then I place it there, and the algorithm realizes turning my head. And so when I turn my head, the actual the sensor array actually moves along with me, so that whatever I might be focusing at, it'll be able to explain to me what I'm looking at.
Wow.
See what I mean?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and this is the kind of it's the kind of transition to this thing with AI. And so you have this little thing,
vision learning. Yeah.
Machine learning. It's kind of many of the apps right now, they have like a little pop up. Okay, you can do this and that, and so on, swipe right, left, whatever. There's some formats and some guidelines which are given by some of the bigger corporations.
Yep.
And, just like Facebook kind of lost the ability to personalize things when it was MySpace, for instance.
Yes. Yeah.
There's these guidelines, accessibility guidelines, and the human interfacing guideline, and all these guidelines are pegging us into this hole, which is the one to recycle, an old technology, because I would call like touchscreens now an old technology. It's been 11 years out there. We've refined it to a point where it's super cool, super crisp, super fast.
Yeah.
But then it could go elsewhere as well, right?
Yeah.
So I'll show you something. And okay. So this is the onboarding system for this, astrology thing project I'm doing, and it's the start of an AI system.
Yep. Okay. Oh wow, the stars, right? We've talked about this briefly.
Yeah.
So it's counting down, remaining 50.
That's right. Yeah.
So what is it looking for? What's the, okay.
It's looking for Jupiter.
Ah, gotcha.
And so it's just sticking out of the camera lens, and wherever you're pointing it at.
Yeah. Do you need a special type of camera? Is this a mobile phone camera?
No, it's just a mobile phone. So I'm using the like satellite position.
Yep.
Side with the geolocation and accelerometer of the phone.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
So you can see this visually, right? But I can also hear it and completely understand it sonically. So this onboarding system is kind of the initial spark for me to try to create this thing. I like to call it a state-based Bayesian network, which kind of allows me to grab every single word, everything that exists within the space of the application and all of its states and how they transit and stuff.
Right.
And to take that and apply natural language processing so that I can actually just say, hey, Leah, yes. All right, can you find me something in such constellation right away? And this, I kind of took it from this, I'm a big fan of sci-fi books, and one of them I would recommend to anybody because it's cool, it's hard, it's, it's Aliens, the Cold Forge.
Say that again. Aliens to Cold Forge.
The Cold Forge.
Oh, the Cold Forge.
Yeah, the Cold Forge.
Okay.
It kind of happens in this like orbital thing that's orbiting around like this big, star and stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff happening in there. But what I really liked in the Alien series was that there was always this onboard AI system. Like some it's called Mother, other Father. In this case, it's like Juno and I think Titus. And they all have kind of like this monitoring of the states of what's happening inside the spaceship. And they'll be there to kind of tell you what's happening. And you can query it and you can, ask it questions as you're walking in the hallway or as you're doing something else. Like I find that to be truly like the next step for interactivity because you want your hands free. You
Yep.
want part of your mind free on what you're focusing on,
Yes.
and you want the system to assist you, right?
Well, context is a really hard one as well, right? Like, I think that's what you're describing is really interesting. If we can get context, some sort of like Google, what's the Google AI assistant? But Cortana, Siri, they don't really have context, and it's very command driven. You ask that one thing, and then it will give you that direct response, or literally just Google or Wikipedia you an answer, and
That's right.
so frustrating to me. It's like I might as well just type it in, and context is really important. So if you can have a conversation with an AI and get context as to why your ship or why your car is not working, I think doing it that way, fascinating. I don't see many people doing a good job in this space, though.
Because it's still bleeding edge. I've noticed that, in some of the technologies, the techniques that are, we like to kind of disseminate, dissect papers and stuff and look into, how they actually achieve a certain result and things. And this AI generalization, which is something which is like a hot topic, and, the different labs out there which are studying that. But in the context of commerciability, one which is trying to approach it the most, I think it's Alexa, because they have a system to interface, context inside. But again, the underlying technology, I have no idea what's going on there. But on my side, I try to look at the context as, an arborescence of different states that occur in a massive random forest. And that random forest is this ability it gives you the ability to transfer intelligence from one point to another. So if you're actually kind of looking at, cooking eggs or whatever, maybe you can use the same motion as you're beating the eggs to make the omelet. You can sort of modify it slightly and then use that to put some nails in it, against the wall or something like that.
Interesting. Fascinating. So, I think we lost you. You there? Hello? We lost him. He'll be back in a second. Oh. You're back. There he is.
Yeah. Not sure what happened right there. Yeah.
That's fine. We were just talking about the AI component from Alexa. So you're finding that's progressing. You were reading up a number of papers, but it's still a fair way away until we get to a point where AI can be generalized enough to be able to give us the sort of answers to questions that we have that may require context to understand what we're asking for.
Yeah, that's right. But there's some techniques which are quite promising, and they're they don't require that much computation. I think it's just that if you put it in the context of commerciability, then it becomes this kind of golem, my cherished, and I'm not going to share it with anyone. Whereas I'm more from the perspective of, the more we share, the more we can commonly, progress, I guess, in that state. And everyone actually has the kind of same skill level in order to, provide it, for different other entities and so on. And one of the big ones is that, is NLP and state-based reinforced learning.
Mm-hmm.
Those two hand in hand kind of, could give us that capacity to have natural dialogue with our computer or with our phone, for whatever we might be doing. And then
Yes.
at that point, all the other companies can jump into that because those companies will have the digital assets and the
Mhm.
context that can
Yep.
then be plugged into the algorithm itself.
That's fascinating. I think I think the idea of having a smartwatch, for example, or Apple's bringing out at some point, hopefully, they're bringing out the Apple Glass, which are there's camera in their glass. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I can't wait for that, man. Like it's like I know so many of the Apple frameworks, like in code.
Yeah.
That it's just a matter of like, okay, all right, jump in, copy paste a couple of places here and there, make it look cool and nice, and play with it. Like,
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't wait. And I've been waiting for so long. You won't have like, it's so frustrating, but it keeps getting pushed out, which I understand. They want to do it. They want to do it right. And, but if they do it right, then that's going to be a game changer.
I like that philosophy. Like it's going to be out when it's out. But we do it right.
Yeah. And moving it away from, your mobile phone screen. They've moved it from a mobile phone screen to a screen on your wrist that you can talk to, again, backed by Siri. Siri needs a lot more work done to it to be.
So much.
I don't know why they're not. I don't know what they're thinking, and I don't know why they're not progressing and pushing it. They must be looking at a new complete overhaul at some point, because they've seemed to drop the ball on Siri for a really long time.
My intuition is that Apple is very concerned about your privacy, and so it had all of these kind of how should we say, like red tape that they actually applied on their softwares compared to Google, which will take all of the data and more if it can, and then it will use that on its gigantic ziggurat of software developers who are going to try to find all the smaller components, whereas Apple takes it more, like it does take your privacy quite seriously. As I recently, in January, right before the COVID started, I went to Cupertino to speak to the accessibility team there, and I met with the director, and I asked him, like, how do you think things differentiate between you and between Apple and other companies? And he said, basically, Apple provides a square deal. You pay more, but then that there's all of this stuff behind, like, all these engineers and support system and everything that will make sure that you will get a good experience. You're not going to customize. You're not going to put gummy bears in every one of your icons on the home screen and stuff like that, that kind of fluff. But we will give you something that functions, right? And so I was like, and if you associate that with it's going to be out when it's out, which is something that kind of closely resembles what James Dyson does, which is to reiterate continuously over the same hardware until it reaches that level where it's unquestionable. Those philosophies are like quite, I guess, refreshing when you're in an environment where someone might just try to push whatever, someone's just going to try to push whatever I'll just get it.
Their new Batman toolkit or some other component to it.
Yeah, some recycled stuff, and then you find out that inside they put like a weight to make it feel higher quality, or it could be a whole bunch of things like that. So I'm not a proponent of that. Yeah.
So where do you see the if we were to wrap it up, I'd be curious to know where do you want the world to be in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think a bit more into looking, the ability to look outward so that we can reflect it back on ourselves. Now, let me put this in perspective. When you are constantly inundated with the voyeuristic storytelling of other people, it's that much time you're actually consuming out of your life where you can actually be part of that process. I would like a world where we actually...
That's amazing, Yuma. I've never heard anyone say it that way. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, a world where we produce more than we consume.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be production as in,
Physical.
Physical. We're just producing. No, we're actually creating and we're moving forward in that sense. And then the more we can produce also locally, obviously, the better it is. And me personally, I'd like to, go off towards the Sunshine Coast and get like good acreage, like 5 acres, and just make it like absolute playground.
Yeah.
Like of experimentation and stuff.
Will I get an invitation to that to your new playground?
Yeah, once it's up, or at least 75% up. Yeah.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Barbecue, man. Local culture and
Absolutely. That sounds like a dream. I know there's been talk about setting up something. I think a lot of people who are in the tech space do end up going and living out somewhere in the country just to get away from the hustle and bustle and the intensity that comes with the industry, tech industry. But something like a Burning Man in Australia, if that's what you're thinking of building, but a productive Burning Man experience, that would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah. I mean, there was this one, it was called Dragon Dreaming near Canberra that I went to.
Okay.
It was pretty cool. Everyone was very, 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 very advanced and, progressive and, thoughtful and intelligent. But if there's this ability, especially in Queensland, to do this kind of format and, to allow everyone to create, really, because I mean, Australia is a unique position right now in the world. Quite a unique position.
Why do you say
a
that?
A lot of IP comes out of Australia. I mean, I know a guy who was responsible for actually making sure that, all systems work so that they can capture the landing on the moon from here.
Wow.
Wi-Fi comes out of here. The Mercer, like the MWA, which is the Mercer wideband array, which in Western Australia is one of the biggest kind of, data providers when it comes to astronomy and the space age. It's Australia is really uniquely positioned to put out a lot of innovation and to keep it for ourselves as well, so that we can, we can say made in Australia, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. That's super exciting. So then, where can people reach out to you and connect with you if they want to learn more about what you're working on, Yuma?
If anyone wants to check us out, like what we do and stuff, you can go to Osiris Labs. So OSYERIS Labs.
Yep.
And you can get in touch with me, 777, so TRIPLE number 7, on Twitter, and our Facebook page, it's Osiris VIP. So awesome. VIP, not very important person, but visually impaired person. Just a little nuance.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love how you take it with a grain of salt. Thanks so much for your time. And
thank you.
Can't wait to have you on again so we can talk more about how you go and how things are progressing on your end, because there's some fascinating things that you're working on.
Yeah, thanks, man. And really, I really support what you're doing, especially over here in Brisbane and stuff. So, let's keep that vibe turning, Yeah.
Absolutely.
Even all with the lockdown.
Thanks, Yuma. Stay on the call with me. I'll end it there, like on the video call, on the chat thing. That was awesome. I was thinking, holy shit, we need more people like you in Brisbane. And one thing I think about quite a bit is this whole concept of brain drain. When I came out of uni, brain drain was a really it was a bit of a talked about topic, and I still think it is the concept that a lot of Australians who get anywhere or are quite talented end up leaving Australia for better opportunities, quote unquote better. And it's exciting to hear that like you've traveled around so much, but you're back here in Australia and you're staying here, which I don't know why, but obviously you said some reason.
To be honest with you, I got a sweet deal with Apple. So as soon as I graduate, so I've got a position there.
Okay.
I can't spit on that. Do you know what I mean? I can't throw that away because it'd be experience, but definitely like home base is still here.
Yeah.
And is the idea.
So you're going over to America?
whatever's going to happen, I'm not sure what's going to happen now with the U.S. The U.S. being in quite far worse
Yeah.
shape than we are right now
Yeah.
in terms of that. But whatever the case, in the meantime, I still have, I'm still continuing what I do every day because that's what I love to do. Like, it's so.
Absolutely.
I tend to create things because it helps me, right? And if
Yeah.
it helps others, then I'm part of that discussion. Like
Well,
I want to be.
what you said about Slack and what you said about, Asana or Trello, having to build a tool so that it becomes accessible to you. It blows my mind that I can't understand why, but
Mm,
it's kind of a shame that they don't they release APIs so that programmers can plug into their platforms, but there's not
yeah.
really a like accessibilities toolkit. Or I don't know if you get to see that, but I don't notice them having like platforms having an accessibilities toolkit for people who are visually impaired or auditorially impaired or
Mm,
physically impaired. You know,
mm.
that there's not really any thought towards that, and probably because it's a small market to them. It's a small
Yeah, it's
market.
niche. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, like Bethesda Software, I think they used to say, I mean, the ones who did Fallout, the Fallout series, they used to put, their slogan was like, games made by gamers for gamers.
Uh,
So they got, for accessibility, it's going to be the same thing. Can't be an interpretation of someone who collected some information from visually impaired people and then put up his interpretation.
yeah. Yeah.
That's not going to work. It's got to be firsthand, written by those people. And
Yeah.
it's important to do it that way. I don't know if you play music. Do you play like instruments and stuff?
Yeah, I used to play a bit of. I started off with guitar. I got into a little bit into piano, but my hands freaking hurt from that. So, and I was a bit, didn't have the similar to you actually. You made that comment around coding. You wanted to get those fast wins to keep you motivated to keep going.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
whenever if I'm trying to learn anything, if I can't get a fast win, I give up on it really fast. So playing piano, I gave up on, but then I learned Ableton, which is like the competitor to Fruity Loops. And so I was making music, I have been making music in Ableton. So yeah, music's fun.